start. Hi, everybody. So happy for you to join us. Today, Melanie Fleishman is joining us from Sag Harbor. So we're spring green to Sag Harbor today. You may have not have seen Melanie in the store, but you've definitely seen Melanie in the store. Melanie is our adults book buyer, and she has a lifetime of book industry experience, from bookseller and editor at big publishing houses. And now you'll see her influence all over the store. Every time people say these books are so incredibly curated, you have the best books, that's because of Melanie and James. So Mel is going to talk to us about some of her favorite books of the year. And when you're a book buyer, excuse me, you look through thousands of books every season. We have so many publishers that we look at, and they each have seasonal catalogs. And so we are looking at thousands and thousands of books. I'm the children's books buyer, so my portion is much smaller than what Melanie and James do. So for Mel to narrow down to 8 that she really loved this year is quite a task to ask her to do. So Mel, should we start out with Luster by Raven Leilani?
Yes, that is my first pick for the season. And I just want to say that I love this selection of books, and I want to make sure that you all, I don't forget any of the reasons that I'm suggesting them to you. So I am going to refer to my notes a little so I don't forget any important things that I want to tell you all. Luster is by Raven Leilani, who burst on the literary scene this year in full force, with endorsements from everyone from Zadie Smith to Britt Bennett. And because of all the hype, I was pretty suspicious of the book, and I put off reading it for a while, but I'm really glad that I went back to it because it completely delivers. Luster's heroine is an unapologetic 20-something Black woman, works in publishing with a dreadful salary, but a big lust for life experience. Following her often inappropriate life choices, and watching her try to make sense of herself and her life and make real human connection and take herself more seriously gives this very funny, sexy, highly original, and unflinchingly honest book. A wild side, but it has a really good heart, and I highly recommend it. I think she's got a big career in front of her.
Yeah, and I read this one as well, and I'm so glad that I'm not a 20-something on the dating scene.
I can agree with that.
Okay, Mel, your next book is Mrs. Moore Goes Missing.
Yes, this is a very special book. It's by Marila Shimichkova. I had to look that up on Google to see how to pronounce that. From the Polish, it's actually a pen name of a Polish poet and a Polish translator who are husband and husband. They have written, they've updated Agatha Christie for our times, and it is part traditional cozy mystery, but part European dark comedy as well. And it's just a complete pleasure to read. The story is a corpse is discovered in a nursing home by one of the nuns, and an aging resident has to become an amateur sleuth to find the murderer. It's like an old Nancy Drew, and she's totally delightful, and happily this is actually the first in a series, so we'll meet her again. It's witty and delightful, as I said, but it's a perfect read for those who like rollicking good plotted mysteries, but the setting of 1890s Krakow was such an added bonus, so the atmosphere adds a lot to this very palatable mystery.
All right, I have not heard of this one. You know, sometimes we miss it amongst the 10,000 or so books in the store, but that sounds fantastic. I'm putting that one on my list. Okay, your next one is A Saint from Texas.
Yes, I've always loved Edmund White's work since he first wrote A Boy's Own Story, which was a coming of age novel, and his essays about Paris, where he's lived for many years off and on. And he's been an acute observer of character, but I was not prepared for this stunning novel. He's over 80 now. It's surprising that someone would write such an assured, beautiful, touching novel at that point in his career. It stars twin sisters from Texas, and they have diametrically opposed personalities and life trajectories. So one of them becomes a very glamorous expat living in Paris, and the other one ends up devoting her life to Catholic charity in Colombia. But his descriptions of character are really incredible. A dance instructor had cowcatcher eyelashes, which really stuck in my head. And somebody had seed pearl fingernails. And his just intricate descriptions are sort of make you stop and underline sections in the novel. It made me cry, it made me laugh, and I found it just totally rapturous. It's a good read for someone of any age. Seems like maybe it's for, your great aunt or something, but I recommended this to so many people and everyone has just fallen in love with this book. So
A book that can make you laugh, make you cry, give you all the feels is wonderful.
yeah.
Okay, next is Funny Weather, Art in an Emergency.
Yes, and I think we are in an emergency right now. It seemed the perfect singular nonfiction book that I chose today to talk about. I do read primarily fiction, but this book, if you're a lover of art and literature, which I believe that you must be if you're listening to this cast, you really should know the writing of Olivia Lang. Her new book selects profiles of artists and writers and musicians and filmmakers, and each one is just a perfect little gem. They're like educations in themselves. Some of the people that she profiles are David Bowie and Jean-Michel Basquiat, the novelist from Ireland, Sally Rooney, the essayist Maggie Nelson. So it's a very wide swath of people, some and some that it would be nice to know more about them. She's got a razor sharp mind, and not only does she draw these beautiful portraits of talented people, but she said that the purpose of the book is to illuminate the ways in which art lifts us up, which I thought was a beautiful message for our times.
I love a book like that just piques your interest and makes you want to learn about this person and that person and something else. And that's just such a gift of reading that just makes you want to learn more.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, our next, They Will Drown in Their Mother's Tears.
This is a novel by Johannes Anuru, and it won the CLMP award, which they call the Firecracker Award this year. It's given to a novel from a small press, which is always nice to support. I was actually a judge on the panel this year, and we read a lot of books, and it was really hard thinking that everyone was going to have a top 10 and a top 5, and we were going to fight and fight and fight, and everyone said this book is here. And everything else is sort of here. It is a firecracker in itself. The author is an acclaimed Swedish poet, and you can really, even through the beautiful translation, you can see that he has a incredible way with language. The novel begins with a very shocking, arresting scene that's like the Charlie Hebdo incident in Paris, where terrorists come in and shoot up a local independent bookstore in Sweden. And from there, we focus on a young woman who was present, who is now in the psychiatric hospital suffering from traumatic stress. Obviously, a horrible experience that she had, but she's a very unreliable narrator. And there's the terrorism, there's fascist Sweden, there's time travel, there's shifting realities. Half the time you're not really sure what's going on, but you love it. It doesn't frustrate you. And in my opinion, it's the best dystopian novel in years. I think it's a gem to discover, because it's challenging, it's ambitious, but you'll never forget it.
Excellent. And this is not a large book. That's a lot of story.
Oh, yeah. You get really lost in this book, I have to say. I'm really glad that the prize was awarded, so maybe it will get a little more attention.
Awesome. Okay. Next is Memorial.
Memorial is by Brian Washington. And a year or so ago, he published a collection of stories called Lot that got a lot of critical acclaim. And this is his first novel. It is set in Texas. I don't know. Texas keeps coming back. It focuses on two young men, Ben, who is Black, and Mike, who is Japanese, and they're sort of budding, fitful romance. They've moved in together. They're trying to sort of a push-pull, and it's very tender and sweet and authentic. But things change when Mike's Japanese mother comes for a visit, and he suddenly flies off to Japan to see his dying father, who he's been estranged from for many, many years. Both boys are estranged from their fathers, and they have a sense of disappointment and abandonment, and I think that's partly what brings them together. But what is really charming about the book is this relationship between Ben, who's left in this Texas apartment with the Japanese woman cooking unfamiliar things in the kitchen and padding around and trying to be invisible, as the weeks go on, and Mike is still in Japan. It's very touching. There's no sugarcoating, though. The characters are very flawed and the cultures clash and meld together, but there's a lovely truth to the writing that I found incredibly appealing.
Yeah, a very unique story, and I haven't finished this one, but I've really enjoyed it, and I think their relationship is so real.
It's so real, right? Yeah, that's what I really loved about it.
Okay, here's a big one.
Here is a big one. This is called Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart, and I have been a tireless advocate for this book. A year and a half ago or so, the British editor was in New York, and I was brought to lunch with him, and he pressed this manuscript into my hand, and he insisted that I read it immediately. And I thought, oh, the bedside table is stacked, but I did it, and I never looked back. This is a book that got a little bit lost in the pandemic too. I think it came out in February. It's a little bit like a fictional Angela's Ashes, if you all remember Frank McCourt's book, but it's set in public housing in Glasgow, with a young boy who's trying desperately to become sort of normal despite his desperate circumstances, living in poverty with a single mother, her rampant alcoholism, but their inextricable bond, his forays into sexual experience, they're all drawn in part from Stewart's personal life. So it rings also very authentically. You will not forget these characters, Shuggie and his very flamboyant and sadly addicted mother, Agnes. It's heartbreaking, but it's also one of those testaments to human resilience to see, how someone can overcome a childhood of real trouble. And happily, it was just awarded the prestigious Booker Prize in England. And I think it's on its way to becoming a real classic coming of age novel for years to come.
Excellent. Okay, so Mel, we're going to end with one that you and I both loved.
Yes.
And I can't wait for you to describe this book because it almost defies description.
I know. I just thought, how do you even talk about this book? It's like, just buy it for the cover, the title alone. We wanted to end on a humorous note, and this is perfect. The author, Jessica Anthony, is from Texas. This is hilarious. It's inventive. It's like nothing I've ever read. It has a sort of bristling, zany energy. It's a breath of fresh air, I think you'll agree, as you've read it. There is Victorian taxidermy and present day politics. We follow this sort of hapless, Reagan-loving, unacknowledged homosexual politician as his incredibly hubristic life unravels in front of us. It's for readers of comic satire, from Evelyn Waugh to Gary Steingart to Andy Greer's Less, that won the Pulitzer a couple years ago, or Paul Beatty's The Sellout. It has incredible comic timing. It's an hysterical adventure. You really don't want to miss it. It's a palate cleanser, I find. And you agree, right, Nancy? You felt
absolutely. Yeah, it's just once I started, I just could not stop. And there's a stuffed armadillo. I mean, what more could you want?
What more could you want?
Travels through centuries.
Exactly. Well,
No,
I hope our,
artwork. Sorry,
yeah, exactly.
I'm in Texas mode.
Yes, we're all in Texas mode with this list. So I hope listeners find some of these books good suggestions for their friends and family. And thank you all for joining us today. And thank you, Nancy, for being my Vanna White.
And along the lines of the book buying, we're hoping that in January that James and Mel will start bringing you little videos of some of their upcoming favorites, books that are going to be coming out in the spring and summer. So
yeah,
look
teaser.
that. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Mel.
Thanks, Nancy. Have a great day.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.